You know, those Lothcats really are cute. Poor Chopper. Ah! Sidebar. One of the things that I have found for years and years and years is you have to gauge a sort of competency when it comes to your writers, when it comes to fiction. If I'm watching a dumb action flick or a silly side adventure or whatever, or something that feels just thrown together, then I can't really speculate all that much on that work. Why? Because I know that the writers didn't put that much thought into it. But if there's a work that has demonstrated a degree of complexity, no pun intended, and actually putting the work and thought into things, then I can. Or to put it another way, there's a reason why certain franchises have people who are constantly debating what every little thing means, because the writers and creators and designers of those franchises are deliberately putting those bits of foreshadowing there for us to discover. You with me so far? I call this the writer factor. It's part of the equation of how you dissect fiction. So this factor helps to determine how much trust we have in a work and thus how much we can extrapolate from it. Now all of that's relevant because Rebels is pretty well written in my opinion. I mean, it does have a lot of flaws. It adheres too much to the kids' attitude thing. It leans very heavily on slapstick. Most of its characters don't actually think straight half the time. But for the most part, the overall narrative construction is quite tight, and I like that. And I feel that gives me enough factor necessary to boost the equation to the point where I can speculate on things like the inference that the Force is not necessarily good. Hear me out. I'm not getting into the big theory yet. I told you, I'm going to leave that to the end. But this is the second time now they have straight out mentioned that there is someone or something who is incredibly well connected to the Force, and that someone or something isn't necessarily aligned with our heroes or the light side in general. This has happened with Bendu, and it happens with the Lothal Wolves. And his statement, are they on our side? They're on Lothal's side. Isn't that the same thing? Good question. I only mention that because I feel it is indicative of where they're taking this overall narrative. Remember, we know that by the time Rebels was being constructed, there was a larger, grand-scale effort to keep the continuity of the AU more codified. And we also know that there are some leaked reports and inferences and information that that was one of the directions they were going to take the story in the stuff that's happening right now, basically, and the idea that the Force, the will of the Force, is something that needs to be opposed. So I think this was them laying the seeds of that in this show. And that's really all I wanted to say. But I wanted to give my reasoning first, to show my work first, so I can say that without actually looking like a loon or a fool. So there's the Thrawn hologram. Nice touch. And so I mentioned how I found the AT-DP earlier. That's the name of it from the subtitles. Well, I've been wondering what the hell to call the Death Troopers this whole time. Apparently they're literally called Thrawn Troopers, at least in the subtitles. So that's that one. Of course, the only competent troopers would be Thrawn Troopers. What else would they be? Am I right? Throughout this whole series, the stakes have been slowly raising. Originally, it was just a few local Imperials, and then it was some local crime bosses, and then it was slightly more less local Imperials. You know, Vader got involved, Tarkin got involved, Thrawn got involved. And bit by bit, the stakes have been increasing, but it doesn't really get any higher stakes than Emperor Palpatine, at least not at this point in history. This could be argued, of course, but it is my opinion that at this point in history, there is nothing higher tier than Palpatine. And he's the one who's gotten involved here. Now, that, if I'm being 100% honest, feels like a bit of a mistake to me. I've always praised Rebels for how low-key it was, and how it seemed to do a natural snowball effect from being one planet to one sector to one region, and then just kind of snowballing and snowballing until now this is functionally where the Rebel Alliance is really starting. But Palpatine, I mean, if we're being honest, even Luke wasn't actually a match for Palpatine in Return of the Jedi, and that's quite a ways from now, after Luke has gotten quite stronger and quite more versed and powerful and higher tier himself. Just kind of jumping to the Palpatine level kind of makes me curious. Now, I know he's going to show up in the next episode, too, so maybe we'll just leave our thoughts on that for there. Either way, So we've got this gateway thing and this Jedi Temple thing, and I'm going to save most of my thoughts on that till next time because, oh boy, the next episode is the one that lit the internet on fire. 3 symbols. I actually made a joke last episode about that being a reference to Jade Empire, but if you think about it, the father, the son, and the daughter really do kind of personify, the open palm, the closed fist, and what I'm calling the third one is the lowered hand. Now, I know what you're thinking, well, hang on, that doesn't line up correctly. And you're right. The lowered hand is the light side, whereas the closed fist is the dark side, and the open palm is the middle. But the open palm is supposed to be the other one that I named, the lowered hand. So it doesn't quite line up perfectly. But it is interesting to see how this kind of mentality tends to find itself in a lot of different works of fiction. I also find it very interesting that the open palm here is the one for the middle. That makes sense to me, though. Because the way I've always seen the Force is that the light side is pacifist, going with things, allowing things to happen. Hence the lowered hand. You're just kind of dangling there, right? I mean, I'm exaggerating for effect so you can see here, but it's just, eh. Whereas the dark side is all about making things happen, forcing things. But being in the middle, well... I also find it funny that the paintings move and both the daughter and the father help him, and so do the wolves, obviously. The son doesn't do anything. You notice that? It's just a funny little touch. I was actually writing a note here saying that I wonder if this is an illusion or if they're literally, the paintings are literally moving. And then multiple other people see the paintings moving, and I'm like, yeah, okay, that's probably not an illusion. Then again, this is a massive force nexus. And... well, like I said, we'll talk about that next episode. So I guess I can buy it. I don't have anything else for this one. This is all build-up. Next week is arguably the finale of Rebels. There's actually 2 episodes after next week, I'm pretty sure. Or I keep saying next week as if I'm doing the Star Trek thing. The next episode, whenever you're going to see it, that's the finale. I've never actually seen it all the way through. I've seen scenes from it. I've read dissertations on it. I've seen geeks discuss it many times. People have come to me for my opinions on it. I'm actually really nervous because I'm curious what I'm going to think about it this time around, having actually watched the whole thing. See you next time, guys.